This is TWiT.
So Mark Gurman was right. He said last Sunday, he said, don't expect an event. Apple's going to come out with this stuff with memos, basically. And the first memo it came out, there is the new MacBook Airs are here. The M3 MacBook Airs. Yeah. How exciting.
Memo. Take a memo, Dottie. Take a memo. This is Tim. Take a memo. No, new MacBook Airs, M3. They look exactly like the old ones. Yeah. It's good. They finally, the M3, remember, debuted with the iMac and the low-end MacBook Pro a few months ago in late 2023. And of course, the MacBook Air is the most popular Mac, so probably needed to come there sooner rather than later. And so it is now, I guess, orders now shipping Friday, I think. And, it is the same exterior, but there are some changes on the inside that are nice, including... the M3 processor having more capability in terms of, we could talk about Apple has a whole AI section because AI is now a checkbox in product announcements.
But all Apple Silicon,
we do it.
All Apple Silicon has had ML coprocessor.
Has had neural engine, but now it's in the press release. I think for a lot of, our audience and similar kind of power users, one of the big stories here is that Apple has enabled, for the first time in Apple Silicon era, the ability for a MacBook Air to turn its internal display off and instead drive two external displays, which you used to not be able to do. And I know that seems super esoteric, but I cannot tell you how many people I've heard from who always had a setup with two monitors and a MacBook Air who haven't been able to do it. And now you'll be able to do it. And in fact, it's a firmware update for that M3 MacBook Pro as well. It will be able to do this too. I don't know why it couldn't do it at launch. That's weird, but that's a big, that's taking one of the big criticisms of the MacBook Air in the Apple Silicon era and knocking it out.
Also, it's not as though, we'll let you put up like a 1080p monitor via HD. No, it's like dual, is it 5K or 6K?
One of them can be 6K and the other one can be 5K.
Yeah. I mean, that's immense.
It's okay. Yeah, two studio displays. It'll drive two studio displays.
But you have to be in clamshell mode. I mean, I think you said that, but I just want to underline it. You have to be in clamshell mode.
You've used up all of your, also used the only two Thunderbolts that you have. And so
that's
to run those monitors.
Well, you could daisy chain, right? Can't you?
Can you?
Sure.
Yeah, and
there's enough throughput
on
that Thunderbolt port to do.
Yeah, and if you're using a Thunderbolt adapter, you can still drive displays are connected to the Thunderbolt adapter.
Or on the back of the display or wherever you've got it. But this is, it's big. It's not everything, right? Because you can't run it with the lid open. But still, this is one of those things. And for the MacBook Pro too, people are like, well, how is it a Pro laptop if it doesn't drive the second external display? Here you go.
When does that firmware update come out?
I'm not sure. It's unclear to me on whether that's something that's enabled by the next version of Mac OS or if there will be a specific firmware update for the MacBook Pro or not.
It wasn't in any of the official releases. I think 9to5 and a couple others asked them directly and got responses saying yes, in the future there'll be a firmware update.
Isn't that interesting? So it had the capability. It was just a software switch they had.
Why it was not on? Why would you ship that base MacBook Pro with that limitation and then turn it on later? That's so weird. But I don't know, maybe somebody inside Apple was like, I think we can do it, right?
That might be
Apollo 13.
It might be a hack.
I think I know how to do this.
Give me some chewing gum and a pair of tweezers. I'm getting in there to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, there have been times in the past, usually not quite this emphatic, where somebody inside Apple did a hack just to make their lives better, and then propagated to other people who saw them working that way, and it basically got into the pipeline as a mainstream feature. I'm not sure that something as big as this happened that way, but I bet that the most influential beta testers and voices for Apple products are inside Apple themselves. When people are complaining about, hey, why does my M1 Mac and my cubicle do this? This is something that gets a lot of attention pretty quickly.
Also, Wi-Fi 6E, that's new, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So a little bit faster Wi-Fi. Now, Wi-Fi 7 just got ratified, but don't pay no attention to that. We've got 6E. Are there any?
I think that we're starting to get to a point where the capability of the laptop is starting to run past the capability of the Air is starting to run past the utility of it. I can just say that a lot of us, with only two, the kind of the limiting factor here is really those two USBs. And I know that people say, oh, we can put them on a bridge, but for a lot of us, putting video on a bridge and audio or audio, all those things are the things that we try to avoid like the plague. And so as a result, daisy chaining doesn't always work. And so as you start to have this really high performance computer, you're having you have that M3, it's really powerful, and it's still limited by these two jacks. And I know that that's the primary, to me, that's the primary difference between a MacBook Pro and a Mac Air,
and
two Thunderbolts.
The RAM limitation, right? It's only 24 gigs still. That's it.
I think you can do a lot with 24. I mean, you can do a lot with 24 gigs. But again, I think this is for someone who wants to have their, I think that if you're casually using it, but I think we get questions in office hours a lot of, hey, should I get this as my video production thing? And flatly, we're like, no.
Oh, interesting.
This is for if you want to do light video or light audio, and you want to do, if you want to do those kinds of things, if you mostly just want to have a great, pleasurable experience to do your general computing, I think it's a great laptop. But as soon as if you want to do something that is remotely professional, the extra, the Max chips, the extra headroom on the RAM, the extra USB, they make a huge difference. So these are not, I think people keep on saying that these are kind of blending between, and to me, the Mac Air is a very different product than the Pro.
Yeah.
Except for the one that's identical to it, but I mean, it does have more ports.
But it doesn't have those ports.
Yeah. Right. But that is a good point. I mean, right now, in terms of the amount of power that you need for 80% of everybody who's out there, a MacBook Air is absolutely going to cover you. And the ability to, again, plug it into a dock, even if you decide to put in a dock, and have like a workstation like setup that you simply plug in and take out, that was one of the final factors. So I think that Apple's going to have to take another look at the MacBook Pro line to do things that are going to really differentiate. Like I know that the unified memory concept it's a subtle discussion about what application RAM means inside Apple Silicon, but still, this is where you start to now look once again at like the base level MacBook Pro and think 8 gigabytes is still kind of chintzy as like entry level machine on a Pro machine. Apple seems to have some trouble now, like trying to convince me to spend $1,600 for a base level MacBook Pro versus like an $1,100 M3 MacBook Air.
You can get now the M2 MacBook Air for $999, but again, that's with 8 gigs of RAM, and I really, is it 128 gigs of storage, or have they at least beefed that up? Let me look. I'm on the Apple Store page. I'm on the base model, $999, which is, that's a special price point, under $1,000.
Exactly.
256 gigs of storage and 8 gigs of RAM. Yeah. Do we not recommend 8 gigs of RAM, or do we?
My recommendation is always max out the RAM to the extent that you can afford. Like if you know what your budget is, and you're balancing out how much extra money do I put in above the base level, I would much rather spend more money on extra RAM, because that's one of the things that makes this thing future proof. Like it's the difference between 6 or 7 years from now, this MacBook Air being usable and being perfectly usable, because you can't expand the storage or the RAM on these things, but at least I can plug in a Thunderbolt external device, and at least I can get a terabyte or 2 terabytes off of that. Whereas if you have a problem that's with lack of RAM, you're just stuck.
Apple took a fair bit of mockery for saying 8 gigs of RAM on a MacBook is the equivalent of 16 on a PC. Is that true, Jason?
And I wouldn't say that, and I think they do deserve some degree of mockery for that. But it's marketing. Marketing is going to be what it's going to be. I think the truth is that a lot of computer nerds will turn their nose up at 8 gigs of RAM, and for good reason. But at the same time, I think that a person who's buying the base model is probably price constrained in a way that it's not going to be a bad experience. It's not going to be the best experience, but it's not going to be a terrible experience. I think that they need to get off of 8 at some point as the base here. But right now, for the MacBook Pro, I actually agree. In fact, you would be better off unless you're, like Alex was saying, somebody who really wants the ports and the card reader and things like that, I think you'd be better off spending the money that you would spend on the base MacBook Pro M3 on a MacBook Air M3 upgraded with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 storage. You can actually get that for $100 less than the base MacBook Pro. But I think you can get by. Again, could our audience get by with 8? Maybe they would push it, but I think a lot of people, low price is the thing, and they can survive.
Yeah.
The Apple Silicon Macs run okay unless you're running like 15 different apps or whatever. Like it's just not. I just there's a little level of snobbery, and it's based in reality, but I also think that it overstates it.
And I'm running. I got a stack of Mac Minis here that are all 8 gigs. One of them 16, and most of them are 8 gig RAM, and I never feel it. Like now, I have to admit that they're somewhat single mission, but they're running apps, they're running Keynote, they're running occasionally Photoshop, they're running other things like that, and I don't feel it at all. So now I wouldn't do the heavy work that I do on my studio on those computers. So I think that it is, so I've kind of separated that out. But I think for the kind of things that you should be doing on the Air, in my opinion, 8 gigs is you're probably not going to feel it for quite some time, and when you start saying, I need 16 gigs of RAM, I would start saying that you should really be thinking about a MacBook Pro, like it is, you should just step up but I think that for most of what the Air is good for, I think for a variety of reasons, I think I would probably, and I think that the M2 right now is still the most, as much as most people who buy an Air need. So I think that it's a pretty good deal right now too. And remember, you can start with 8 gigs, and that's the $999. But of course, you can upgrade those past that. So I believe you can get at least a 16. I think.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. If you enjoyed this little snippet of our programming, make sure you check out the full MacBreak Weekly. The link is right down there.